Hi, listeners. Welcome to the She Speaks Life podcast, a weekly encouragement where we share our God stories. I'm your host, Jayme Elizabeth, and I am so glad you are spending time with us today to listen. Hey, friend, welcome. I'm so glad you chose to listen to today's episode. The story I believe most of us can relate to, and that sometimes in life we are living out our purpose and calling, and then God intervenes to take us in a whole new direction. I'm here with inspirational speaker Beatrice Garrett.
Well, hi, Jayme. Thank you for inviting me, and hi to your listeners.
So cool how you reached out to me and talked about how you had this affluent, job here as an attorney, and then you thought you're living out your calling and your purpose. And I think so many of us can relate in where we're at in life, and then all of a sudden, God comes in and says, okay, this is the new path I want you to go on. And you just think, wow, wait a minute. I thought this was going to be my thing for years to come here. So,
Right.
I love that you showed some obedience in that and some surrender. And I can't wait for you to share that encouragement with us.
Well, first off, I would like to tell you that the surrender and the obedience was a journey. It was
Yes.
something that I did not initially decide, okay, Lord, you want to change the direction and trajectory of my life? Okay, I'm down with the plan. It was
Right.
it was a process. And
Yeah.
so when I started working at legal aid, I did not have any desire for litigation. So, Legal Aid is one of the largest nonprofit law firms that represents the marginalized, the poor, children. And so I envision myself as an attorney volunteering for organizations like that. And my dream was to be a business transactional lawyer. I also have an MBA, so I had a path. I had a path that a vision for my life. And so once I passed the bar, I live in Wisconsin, and I went to law school in Ohio. So when I came back to Wisconsin, moved back to Wisconsin, I had to take the bar exam to practice law. So after I passed the bar exam, I started looking for employment. And so I thought, well, volunteering is something that is just part of my DNA. I just think that it's a civic tax that I owe as
Mhm.
living on this planet and giving back. And so that's very important to me to volunteer. So I thought, well, while I'm looking for a job, I'll volunteer at legal aid, and I'll learn. They'll give me an opportunity to learn Wisconsin law, and then more importantly, to help people. And so I was looking for a job, and nothing started to happen as soon as I'd like to. So an opportunity became available at legal aid. The executive director at the time asked me if I would accept this position. I said, okay, well, I'll accept it part time, because I still had I was holding on to my dream. I made this
Yeah.
investment, and I was determined to get a return on that investment. So I accepted the position, and I tell you, working there really it changed my life. I started off representing children, and when you're representing children, whether you have a child or not, there's just this instinct that comes into you that you want to protect them, and so that gave me
Mm.
a great opportunity to protect children. And also when I had an opportunity to talk to the parents of these children, when the attorney granted me permission to talk to them. And sometimes I also had an opportunity to encourage them as well, so that, just by, helping them to just not wait on someone to do something for them all the time, just trying to give them a little bit more, inspire them to take a little bit more initiative, that just don't wait for someone to do something for you. And so I just, every moment that God gave me an opportunity to inspire someone, that I would do so. And so there was one story I'd like to share with your listeners that
Yeah.
was just really one that really just moved my heart. I was assigned a guardianship case, and my client at the time was 17 years old, and so his mother was incarcerated, and her friend filed for a petition of guardianship of her son. And what I like to do in my when I interview my clients that are 12 above, I always ask them two questions. I ask them about school, and I also ask them about their dreams. And my client told me, he said, "Well, I'm not in school," and I said, "Oh," I was like, not judgmental. I said, "Well, if you were in my house, you could live in my house and you didn't go to school." So I just explained to him the importance of an education. And yeah, and he also liked to, and talking with him, I learned that he liked to skateboard. And so I made an analogy of maybe one day being a business owner and why it was important for him to have reasoning skills, being able to ask thoughtful questions. So, as most typical teenagers, he was just there listening, no response, no reaction to what I
Yeah.
what I said.
Just
And so,
nodding. Yeah.
yeah, just I'll just take it. And
Yeah.
so, there was a
Mhm.
second appointment. I needed to meet with both him and the petitioner. So I met with my client first. Again, no response as to what our conversation. Well, it really wasn't a conversation. I was just talking. He was just listening. So there was no response. And then when I met with the petitioner, the first question she asked me, she said, "Did he tell you?" And I was clueless. I didn't know what she was talking about.
Mhm.
I said, "No." And she said, "He went to the high school on his own and registered for school." And
Oh my goodness.
I
Oh,
thought, wow, as there were moments when I just fought God for just being there as long as I was, but He just gave me
yeah.
opportunities like that to go the extra mile, and that was just part of my
Yeah.
personality, just to go the extra mile. And I knew that it was important for him to know and understand the importance of getting an education. Now, whether he did it or not was just up to him, but I just wanted to let him know how important it is for him as he grows older. I had adults that I've met with that could not read or write, and so and they've signed contracts having no idea what they signed. So that's why I was just explaining to him why it was so important for him to get an
Mm.
education. And
Wow,
so,
so good,
yeah.
Beatrice. And it just shows like when we're talking to people, we sometimes, I mean, I've done this where it's just kind of like you don't think they're taking what you're saying and really having it resonate, right? In their
Mm-hmm,
heart. And it just
mm-hmm,
shows like you never know what is going on in the inside. Only God knows. And what an
mm-hmm.
encouragement you were speaking life to this young man to go back and get a high school education and speaking through like experience, like you're sharing a story of people that you met that couldn't read or write and were signing documents that they didn't even know they were signing. And I'm sure that just, shook them a little bit like, I don't want to be that where I don't know, what I'm reading or, what I'm signing. So I love that it wasn't just a preaching thing, but
Right.
like, hey, this is what I've encountered and this is why it's important. So cool.
So, as my time there, I kept asking God, why won't you let me, why won't you let me go?
Mhm.
There were a couple of colleagues and there were two other colleagues that I worked with. So we had accountability meetings. We were all looking for new opportunities, and nothing happened. And I was really angry with God. And so I decided that God was in control and I would just grow where I was planted and just do good work. And the moment I decide to just allow God to be God and be in control, He made His move. And it was
Mhm.
so unexpected. I I came into work early one morning. And before that, I was coming in like a little like 9 o'clock, just really, because I wasn't really like God. I'm just not feeling it. Now it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And
You're like, I'm burned out.
yeah. And so, I
There's no
come in.
fire.
Yeah, yeah, and so I decided, okay, I'll just turn a new leaf, and so I started, so the day that I decided, okay, I'm turning a new leaf, I came in early, the exact hour, like maybe 15, 20 minutes after I was in the office, after I completed my morning task, and so. the executive director came in and asked me to come into the chief staff attorney's office. And I was like, when you come into the chief staff attorney's office, it's like, well, like the thoughts that were racing through my mind, like,
Right.
what could I possibly, what did I do? What could I possibly done? And I'm thinking,
Right.
did I make someone mad? Did they file a complaint against me? Did I miss a case? And, like all these thoughts were
Yeah.
just racing through my mind. And so once I got into her office and I sat down, they told me that the grant supporting my position, like most nonprofits, they are really dependent on philanthropy, grants, and annual fundraising. And so they told me, well, the grant supporting your position, we no longer have funding. And so I wasn't so taken aback because they had previously talked about that for the program I was a part of an initiative where this is when foreclosures were really, there were a lot of foreclosures. And so there was an initiative program with a number of partners within the city of where I live to help homeowners to retain their homes. And so there was some talk that maybe possibly that the funding would not be available. So there was some talk, but nothing that was really solid. And so when they told me, I was had a little mixed feelings. I was like, okay, well, it's a big world, so there's new opportunities out there. But I was really mad with God because I had been looking for a job and nothing came through. No interviews. Just maybe I get a acknowledgement that receive your application will let you know if we're going to call you in for an interview, but nothing really that would give me some hope that there's an opportunity that's just looming that I just can just pursue. And so that's why I was so mad with God because I didn't have any direction. I didn't know. I knew what I needed to do as apply as an attorney, apply for other legal jobs, but I didn't know why God would just say, okay, here, become unemployed and not have your next opportunity. So then that was the journey. That was when the journey. I started applying for legal jobs, and I was also looking for jobs. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so I was really interested in Chicago. I did some networking there, and I really liked the city. I like the big city feel, and so I would just commute back and forth, networking, and just becoming involved in the legal community. And nothing happened. And every opportunity that I would pursue, God was like, no, it's not it. So I started even looking for jobs outside of law. And I remember this so clearly. One morning in prayer, I was just bawling, boo-hooing the God, like, why are you doing this to me? I thought I was a good person and blah, blah. When we're going through and we tell God, well, how we've tried to please him and what we've done. We just try to
Right.
put it all before him. Like, why are you doing this
Yeah.
to me?
Hey,
me,
we've
me,
all been there. We've all been there. Yeah.
me of all
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And so he said to me so clearly and so distinctly, he said, I am not moved by your tears. I am moved by my word. And so that was the moment that I decided that I would have a standing appointment with God in the morning and in the evening. And I knew that I just thinking back, like my relationship, I said, with God was so superficial. And so it was like, I started to spend time with him, reading his word and prayer, to learn to hear his voice. And so when I started to do that, but I was still going my way, trying to just still fit the circle into the square, and so
Right. Yeah.
it was more when I was still hitting these roadblocks, and there was one opportunity that I was really hopeful for. I had an interview. It was with a foundation. They were looking for a lawyer in their philanthropic services, and so the interview went well. They liked me. I liked them. And then they asked me to submit a strategic plan. And when they ask you for a strategic plan, they know that that's serious, that they are really interested. And so I did that. Then I received an email from the human resource assistant. And she told me that the foundation hired an agency to help them with their strategic planning, and they advised them to freeze all hiring. And so I was like,
Oh,
crushed,
yeah.
crushed.
Oh.
But she said, but we still maintain an interest in you. And so I just continued looking for a job. And then I contacted them back 2 months later, and she said, no, nothing's changed. And so it was that moment where I said, God, I was like, I said, I surrender. I just raised my hand up in surrender and said, have your way. And then that's where the journey began. And so, of trying to figure out, really, I had no idea what he wanted me to do. What was the plan? And so it was that time of learning to be still, learning to shut down the internal noise so that I could hear. And I was so desperate to hear from God. There was minimal TV. Minimal phone contact when I would drive, no radio on. And so I did that until I heard the whisper, inspirational speaker. And then when I heard that whisper, it was like, well, how am I going to do this? Or, how am I going to get started? And there again, too, began the journey. And so what I did as far as the networking for a legal job was like, okay, well, this is the same thing as with, excuse me, finding a job. So it's just doing the networking, reaching out. And so I didn't know what my message was at the time. And as I was reaching out and networking, I went to an event with with the Wisconsin Christian Foundation, National Christian Foundation here, and I met with a gentleman, the presenter, and he connected me with an attorney who also worked for nonprofits. And she told me about this Law Association of Christian Lawyers. So their annual retreat is here in Wisconsin. So 2 hours away, I went there. I met an attorney from Chicago. He told me about a national prayer ministry. And so my heart was so moved by this ministry that I wanted to bring it here to Milwaukee. And I connected with the executive director, and I got the ball rolling. And Jayme, I could tell you, I had never experienced God's favor as much as I did in starting this prayer ministry. And I had no
Mm.
pushback from the court. The facilities
Mm.
management granted me permission. I sent him an email in the morning, and like the next
Mm.
day, I had permission to
Mhm.
access the county grounds and set up the table with the other volunteers, and everything just went seamlessly. And so I met with a pastor from the church 2 blocks away. I wanted them to find parking for the volunteers. And so he was telling me the story about a group of nuns. We talked about prayer. And he said that they prayed for a broom. And God, someone put a broom outside their door. And that story was so significant to me. It's like no matter how insignificant we think our needs are or our concerns, everything matters to God. I mean, that he would answer a prayer for a broom. And
Yeah.
so, he granted the permission. And then God told me, well, talk to this, a club. It was an association, a club for like professionals. And he said, talk to the parking manager about parking for the volunteers right across the street from the courthouse. And so I did that. And the parking manager, he was a little hesitant at first about, offering some parking, and he told me that lawyers that belong to the club weren't allowed to park during the business day. And then, of course, me being a lawyer, I started advocating for God. And then his name was Isaac. I said, your name Isaac, it's in the Bible. Just really just trying to just warm him up to the idea. Then he granted me 5 spots. And so God he just unfolded everything. But it was when I met with when I the prayer ministry, that was when the enemy tried to talk me out of it, like telling me, well, you have to look for a job, you can't spend your time doing this. And so I just prayed about it, and God told me, well, if you do this, I'll lead you to your next opportunity. I said, okay, God, I trust you, I'll do it. And so once I did that, the ministry started. It was well received. And so I started, I went up every morning, Monday morning. We were down there at the courthouse praying for people. And I had a couple conversations with God. I was like, okay, Lord, I did what I told you I would do. I'm like, where's this opportunity that you promised me that you would lead me to?
Mm.
And what I learned was that just because God did not respond right away didn't mean that he was not going to lead me to the opportunity. He was testing me. He was testing my
Mhm.
faithfulness
Yeah,
to the
that's right.
process. He was testing my obedience to what he had asked me to do. He was also testing
Mhm.
me to whether I trusted him to lead me to the other side. So I would get up
Mhm.
every Monday morning as though nothing was happening in my world. And I just remember just people, praying for a woman and just say, our sister was diagnosed with cancer. And after I prayed, she says, now I have hope. And, although I
Mm.
didn't understand why God was continuing to keep me there, but I understood that he was using me to pray for people and along with the other volunteers. And so I continued on and then continued praying. And then another disruption came. My father became terminally ill. And and
Mm.
so that rocked my world. And I said to God, I said, why? Why now? The job thing, I was a little salty that I didn't have a new opportunity. But, I was like, well, I was looking for a job anyway while I was employed there. So I had more time. So I thought it was a gift. But when my father became terminally ill, that's when it really hit me like a ton of bricks. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
didn't have yet much time
Mhm.
to uh, to moan and cry because my father was a priority. And so
Right.
that time really, it was a blessing that I could spend time with my father and with my brothers and my mother and helping to care for him and to sit with him as he transitioned. And I knew that, we don't always understand God's plan. But when I look back,
Mhm.
as you said in the introduction, just having that opportunity to be his advocate, to go to the hospital with him and to advocate for him, that was just an opportunity that I would not have had if I was working and having, caseload and, working on my
Right.
cases. And so, although we may not understand God's plan while we're in the midst of the trial, as we
Mhm.
get over that song, by and by we'll understand. And so it's like while we're enduring through the trial, what is so important for us is to know that God, he tells us in his word that he has plans to prosper us. He has good plans for us. But we have to learn to be patient. His timing is not our timing. And
Mhm.
the where we would like to be positioned may not necessarily be where he wants us to be positioned. And looking back,
Mhm.
I realized that being a lawyer, being an advocate, being passionate about advocating for my clients, going the extra mile, that God equipped me for everything that I needed to do. Every day, just about, I was in court. So, being a lawyer in court is a skill that's an invaluable skill. Learning to think on your feet, being able to respond to an argument right away is such an
Right.
invaluable skill, and being able to relate and just my clients just coming from various race and ethnic background, being able to relate to different people. So that was in itself
Mhm.
an opportunity that God was using me to be an ambassador. At the time,
Yeah.
I wasn't really really understanding why God was using me, but I understood that He knew my heart. He knew that I would go the extra mile for people and to talk and to offer encouragement where I saw that there was a need to, and especially when people feel like they've been overlooked or when people have been rushed along, no one seriously talks to them, smiles
Mhm.
with them, talk to them with respect, with dignity, and then when you have someone that interacted with you, like sometimes people were just like, it kind of caught them off guard a little bit, but then as
Mhm.
they got to know me and just being personable, then that's where the magic happens. That's when they open up, and that's when
Mhm.
the trust begins. When they know that you're genuine and sincere. So you never know when we're
Yeah.
meeting people that just asking God to give us that patience, that the understanding. That you just never know how He's going to use you and how our words and what we do for someone can impact their lives. And showing a little kindness to someone can go a long way in
Mhm.
and their encouragement and not maybe giving up or maybe feeling like there's no one in the world that really cares about them. So, it's just
Mhm.
those words that just that little time that we can offer someone that can
Mhm.
make such a difference in someone's life. So
Yeah, it's so true. And to back up a little bit, I love hearing how intimate you became with the Lord during your hardest times. And isn't that true when we're going through that desert or the wilderness and the storms in life hit us? We are grasping on to what we know is the only hope, and that is our Lord Jesus, right? And so when we come to God and we're really leaning in, pressing in, and really wanting to get close to him, that's what he wants. He wants us to get to know him in a relationship. And sometimes, he just allows those hardships to happen. He doesn't cause them, but he'll allow them to enter in so that we can learn more of who he is, learn more about who, we are in Christ, and know that he's the only one that stays the same, and everything else in the world changes, and we get so dependent, I think, on worldly things, and our jobs or income or people, and he wants to show up and go, no, like, I am your steadfast, like, I
Mhm.
am the one that will never leave you and never
Mhm.
change. And
Mhm.
and it's such a good lesson too for us to know, like, our joy isn't dependent on our circumstances. And I kind of could pick up when you said you walked into your job, that one morning you felt like you turned a leaf, and it was almost like you went in there and you went from burnout to, oh, well, I better, you kind of had this joy regardless of going back into that same office. And it was just a change of a heart posture for you.
Mhm.
And then that was the day that they said, hey, we got to let people go. And, that surrender and just going, okay, Lord, I don't know what that plan B is. So many times we want to know what that plan B, that next step. I mean, we're just human. That's our
Mhm.
flesh.
Mhm.
And God, that's where he's got us in that hallway. And we're
Mhm.
just kind of going, all right, Lord, I'll just be on my knees, right? And
Mhm.
be in
Mhm.
prayer until you open that door. And that is so hard. It's easier to say, or to, maybe express that to somebody else because you've experienced that. But once somebody experiences that and then sees that open door, it's like, oh my gosh, my faith, it's all about that faith, right? That's what it comes down to, is
Mhm.
just, faith is being, devoted to God's will. And he
Mhm.
waits for us to just be in commitment and devoted to his will. And then in his timing, like you're saying, we just need to be patient in his
Mhm.
timing. It's not
Mhm.
going to be ours. And he will reveal what that is. But he's waiting for our little heart to line up with his, and our character to grow to be more like him, and
Right. Right.
everything else.
I would like share this with your listeners. What I learned is that what we think is working against us is really working for us. And it's just,
Mm,
if we just get out of the complaining and the whining stage and just tell God, this is how it is. I don't like it. Just
yeah.
accepting our circumstances is the first thing. And when we can
Hmm.
accept it, and then once we can accept it, that we don't have to like it. We just need to accept it. We just need to
Oh,
allow
so
God
good.
to be God. Yeah, to be God.
Yeah.
And then once we accept it, then the second process is surrendering to it and allowing
Hmm.
God to lead you, because the most terrifying thing is to just get up and not know where you're going in the morning, how you're going to pay your bills. And
Right.
when we just start to think about who God is, He's giving us
Hmm.
the opportunity really to intimately know that He is our provider, that He
That's
is
right.
our waymaker, and that He always provides a way in the wilderness and the desert seasons. So God provides a way
Mhm.
of escape. But if we can just learn not to panic, when and it's easier
Yeah.
said, like it's easier to say than that. Easier said than done when we have bills to pay, when we have children to take care of, or if it's our health, or whatever the issues may be that we're dealing with. But if we can just allow Him to be God and to trust Him, and then that He knows what we need. And so,
Mhm.
because He knows our personalities, He knows where we are best suited. He knows the
Mhm.
relationships that are best for us. He knows the job positions that will fit well with our temperament, or where He can work through us. So it's sometimes letting go of our plans is like what you were
Yeah.
saying in the introduction. It really is allowing God to show you a grander plan that He has for your life. And that our plans, when we
Mhm.
look at God's plans, they really are a little bit small. And because He has infinite thoughts about us. And we are so finite in our thoughts and our
Mhm.
capacity. But God, no matter where you are, He can make you skip from the bottom of the line all the way up. He can elevate us all the way up to the top
Mhm.
of the line. And so
Yeah.
when we just say, God, I will just trust you to be God, and help me in my
Mhm.
unbelief. Help me when all I see is the chaos. All I see is the turbulence, because I know that you speak peace to the winds and the waves. So if I just stay in the boat, I know you won't let me
Mhm.
topple over. I know you won't let the wind just take me out of this boat. I'll hold on to you, because you're going to lead
Mhm.
me. God knows our end from our beginning. He knows the book of life on us. So we're just living it out. And what happens to
Mhm.
us, it's new to us. But to God, yeah, you're right on schedule. I knew
Yeah.
this was going to happen on this day. Though I'm
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
panic about it, and we'll feel
Right.
like God has abandoned us. But no, God knew it was going to happen.
Mhm.
And He just wants His test, excuse me, His silence is our test. What will we do? Will
Mm.
we panic? Or will we praise Him?
Mhm.
Will we say, thank you, Lord? Although I may not see where you're taking me, but I know because you're leading me, I know I can't get lost.
Yeah.
And when we're in that silent, when God is not moving seemingly in our life, that when we can learn to praise Him and we can learn to worship Him. And I really understood how when we're praising Him, we're going through the most terrible and dark times of our minds. And when we just give it all to God, and we can soar above our problems in prayer and
Mhm.
worship, it's like there's no other high. When you come down for it, you feel fortified. You can just shake it off, the doubt, the fear, because you know that God does not mean anything to harm us. He has plans
Mhm.
for our good. We can trust Him. He's not like
Mhm.
humans where He will lie. He's not man. He will not change His mind. So when we just say, God, just help me to just trust you and walk with me. Holy Spirit, let me be obedient to your instructions. And when we're obedient to the instructions, we won't find ourselves in the pit. We won't find ourselves going into the roadblocks and the winding roads, of finding ourselves going in circles, because we're allowing God to lead us, the one who has our plans. And when we do
Mhm.
that, I can tell you that from my experience, I never imagined that I would be an inspirational speaker. I never imagined that God would give me a download for the chapters of a book. What I understood, and when I wrote a little love letter in my book to the reader, is that it was through my trials, it was through my betrayals, it was through the vicissitudes of life that brought me
Mhm.
to my knees. And I learned the
Mhm.
power of prayer. And I learned that
Mhm.
God's plans are so much grander than our own.
Mhm.
And if we can just
Yeah.
trust Him during that middle part, that messy middle, that the gap, when
Mhm.
we've gone through we're at that season of disruption. We're trying to get on the other side of it. But if we can trust Him during that period, that bridge that takes us over to the blessings, to the breakthrough. And while we're going through that process, that's where we can let go of those burdens. That's where we can let go of the hurt, those that people that may have betrayed us. We can let all of that go in that little middle space of the gap and come out better, come out wiser, come out
Yeah.
fortified in our faith. The breaking
Mhm.
is not comfortable. It hurts.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
painful.
It is. Yeah. And I
But that,
love what you said about praising God in that pain. I mean, I went through a really dark time over the summer, and all I did was praise Him. Even if I didn't feel like it, I took what David did and I just praised Him. And
mhm.
it just, that's the remedy. That's the medicine right there. I
Right,
mean, that
right,
yeah,
right,
that filled
right.
me up so much, and then I just kept doing it again, and, "Oh, well, this is why King David did this," like, "This is
Right.
why it's in the Psalms and stuff. This actually does work." And I love that you mentioned praise, because it's prayer and praise, and sometimes we miss that praise part, and it really does work. It brings us that joy back into our soul.
It does, and it brings us, and it brings the joy in our soul, and then it reminds us who we are. We have the
Yeah.
privilege of going into God's courts. We have the privilege of thanking Him and allowing Him that He will. We can, when we are praising Him, we can take off that garment of heaviness and put on that garment of
Mhm.
praise. And then when we think about
Yeah.
how faithful He has been, how He has never left us, that He will see past our faults and see our needs,
Mhm.
and He will, even
Mhm.
when we are unfaithful, He will still bless us. And that mercy
Mhm.
that He has for us, the grace that He extends for us. And so when we are recognize what all we are heir to, when we are in His presence, that just gives us a little bit more authority and boldness to tackle whatever it is. And then we're less likely to allow the enemy to start planting those seeds of doubt, to letting us know that although it may have been a long time, or you may have been enduring the trial or the season that you're in for a while, but we know we have a certainty with God. Even though the
Mhm.
what we're going through, it may seem uncertain, but there's still certainty with God. He has an
Yeah.
expected end. He has a plan for us. So we just have to
Mhm.
have that confidence and trust that while we're
Mhm.
going through, we're going through to something, to get to something better. God has a reason for it. And that when we're going through the difficulty, there's a cost that we pay. There is a cost that's associated.
Mhm.
That cost is pain. That cost may be losing ourselves to find ourselves. It may be able to
Yeah.
find God in a new way, in a new light. And so there's so many benefits that we definitely will receive when we're going through, but we can't see it as we're going through, because all we can see is, well, why is God doing this to me? Is He punishing me? Why did this spouse leave me? Or why is this diagnosis? And we, on the
Mhm.
mountaintop experiences of life, we really don't need God, because everything is going fairly well. But it's when we're in the
Mhm.
valley, when we're walking through and we don't even know how we're going to make it, that God
Mhm.
shows up, that He gets the glory. We see a physical manifestation of His glory, of His Spirit, with the healing, the breakthrough, whatever we're believing Him for. And so if we can just allow ourselves to just allow God to just take us on this journey. I like to call it an invitation. That just
Mm.
accept this invitation. There are some little fine print that we don't know how long that will this journey will last, nor do we know if it'll get worse before it gets better. But it's an invitation to go on a journey.
Yeah, so good. All right. Well, I think those were like 10 takeaways here, but I know at the end, I like to voice, hey, leave us with a takeaway. So if you just have a few words here, we'll finish up with a takeaway, and then let us know where we can connect with you and the book you mentioned.
To anyone who is experiencing disruption right now, and you may not understand it, you may not like it, but what I would like to say to you is to just accept what God is allowing in your life right now. That He's not trying to punish you, He's not trying to hurt you, that there is an expected end for you. God has the wow factor. He will blow your mind. Just trust Him. Allow him to be God, allow him to lead you, and just trust and have confidence in his plan, and also trust yourself and have confidence in yourself. You don't have to know the answers. The Holy Spirit will
Mhm.
give you what you need to get through.
So good. Thank you, Beatrice. And where can we find you?
Well, I am. You can find me on my website at www.beatricegarrett.com, and there you can connect with me on my other social platforms. And I have a little ebook that I have right now, so The Overcomer in You. And then, if your readers would really like to sign up on my email list, the book that it will be published is When God Pushed the Pause Button on My Life, and so that should be released in early spring.
I appreciate you speaking life to us and encouraging us that God is good and He is faithful no matter what our circumstances look like. So, appreciate you, Beatrice, for coming on here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening today. I trust that God has encouraged you through this message. For more information on this ministry and to access free downloads, please visit my website at jaymeelizabeth.com and sign up. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Jayme Elizabeth She Speaks Life. That's JAYME Elizabeth She Speaks Life. Until next time, my friends, I pray God reveals Himself through your own life story.